Are you a fan of comic books? The Comic Shop has you covered. Every Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we review modern comics live in real time with you, our fellow comic book enthusiasts. Feel free to keep up to date with the newest comics by checking out VV Comics' website. VV Comics is a digital platform where you can purchase the newest comics from brands such as Marvel, Star Wars, Disney, and more. Purchase the read-only standard edition or upgrade to the limited edition. These limited edition comics are collectible editions with cover variants randomly assigned at the time of purchase and can be sold on the secondary market. They also offer immersive features such as reading and displaying your comics in augmented reality. Take your digital collecting to the next level with VV Comics, or just visit vv.me for more information on digital comics or digital collectibles. And as you can see, this is the site. They do drop comics same day as print, so you can even get them before your local comic book store even opens. And like I said, also check out vv.me because they do have figurines, statues, cars from your favorite brands such as Ubisoft, Disney, DC, Lamborghini, Funko, Star Wars, and more. Once again, that is vv.me or vv.me/comics. Wait, I gotta hold on. I gotta say what's up real quick because he just came up. Yo, we got Comics Explained in the building. We got Rob in the building. Rob, what is good? What is good? What is good? How are you doing? You gotta unmute yourself. He is up, right? I see him as speaker.
No, he's here.
Oh, there you go. Oh, there you go. There you go. Rob, what's up, bro?
He's got to get the sexy mic to work. Hold on, give me a sec.
The anticipation is killing me right now.
Yeah.
No worries. No worries. No worries. Yeah, sometimes the sound is glitching a bit. I don't know if you're on your phone or if you're on a PC.
Was this a butt dial?
It could have been. Maybe he came up on stage by accident.
At the perfect time?
That could be a thing. It could be a thing.
Damn.
Is that better or is that worse?
Hey, there we go.
You're good. We got you. What's up? How you doing, man?
Not too bad, man. Yeah, dude, the show's really, really good. I will say one of the things that really is awesome, like having done this for so long, is to kind of like occasionally sit down and look at like the entirety of the comic book scene across social media. And I wouldn't be like arrogant enough to be like, and it's because of me, but it is nice to be able to say like I had a hand in helping build it and helping it grow. But yeah, man, like I think this is dope. You guys have like a whole setup, to teach people, how to get into comics. Cause you're not wrong, right? I mean, it's super daunting trying to get into comics, especially right now, right? Like the Krakoa era ended in the X-Men. And so people are like, now's a great time to jump onto the X-Men. It's like, no, it's not either, because it feels like X-Men in the 1990s, right? They have like 20 books or something like that coming out right now, between miniseries, one-shots, and the main series. So it can be really difficult to get in to the world of comics. So yeah, especially if you're coming from like a manga background. Totally different beast.
So what would you personally recommend, right? Like for people trying to jump in and things like that, how to dive into it? Especially since we have a lot of new people.
It depends on what you like. Truth to tell. Like it 100% depends on what you like. Because there's a million different places to start, right? So if somebody said, okay, like I want to read, I don't know, like what is it? Marvel Rivals is really big right now, right? So if somebody said, okay, like I want to read, Moon Knight. I mean, I made a little TikTok video thing or Twitter video thing, whatever it was, and I was like, just go read the Jed McKay run. Like have you guys read the Jed McKay run from Moon Knight?
We haven't, but it's something we can check out.
Bro, the Jed McKay run is amazing. So there's this really cool moment, and technically Deadpool did it first, and I mentioned this in that video, that little Twitter video, but like there was this really, really cool moment where there's this head vampire in the city of New York, right? Because the vampire race across the world in Marvel Comics is kind of split into factions. And technically you have Dracula that oversees it all. And while you do have, little groups that kind of answer to him, you also have like rogue groups that exist out there. And this one
Mm.
guy had just like rolled into New York and was systematically turning people into vampires, building out a brood, and then having other members of that brood turn other people into vampires. And so recognizing how dangerous Mark Spector is, right? Because like Moon Knight's killing off vampires over time. This guy goes to like Taskmaster and he's like, hey man, so I need you to kill, Moon Knight for me. And Taskmaster's like, absolutely not. I'll go after anybody else. Spider-Man, Hulk, whoever, but I am not going after Moon Knight. That guy's crazy. And so,
Oh man.
so like then he goes to Moon Knight and tells him, hey man, like this guy's trying to kill you. So Moon Knight and his group, right? This is when you get like the Midnight Mission and all that stuff.
Hmm.
So, Moon Knight and his guys end up catching up to like this big vampire group and the vampire leader. And he has one of his guys activate the sprinkler systems. And the vampire guy is like, really? Like that was your plan? To like activate a sprinkler system? He's like, what are you gonna do? And Moon Knight's like, no. He's like, you think I'm a superhero. And that's true. Technically I'm a superhero. I'm also an anti-hero. He's like, but I'm also a servant of Khonshu. That makes me a priest. And I
Mm.
consecrate this water and he turns it into holy water and like kills all the
Oh.
vampires in one fell swoop. It's amazing. Like, and that's like the second story arc, right? It gets
Okay.
better and better as time goes on. And I won't spoil the ending well, not really the ending. I won't spoil the way the Jed McKay's run segues into Blood Hunt. But it's
Hmm.
really, really cool. But yeah, so, I mean, if you wanted to read Moon Knight, I would say the Jed McKay run is really the only
Jed
one you
McKay.
need, right? I want to say maybe it's like 20 something issues in so far. If
Okay.
you're a fan of the Fantastic Four, Hickman's run is like, read only Jonathan Hickman's run. You could probably read the New World story from Mark Waid's run if you want to. If you wanted to get into Squirrel Girl, I don't know, man. Squirrel Girl's a meme. Like, it's weird with Squirrel Girl, man. It's really weird. Um,
Good for you.
I want to say during Bendis's run is when you found out that she had a relationship with Wolverine at one point. But yeah, I mean, honestly, man, I mean, what's your all's interest? Like, I mean, what do you guys, if I say, okay, like, what's one comic or one character that you really want to read about?
I will
Like,
say a good one from Hickman was and we read this one, here is the, Alien versus Predator, versus Avengers run.
Yeah. Yep.
yeah, that's phenomenal. It's Jonathan Hickman though, so it's going to be a really slow build. And I bet dollars to donuts it's going to end on some kind of a massive cliffhanger because I think the final issue comes out here in the next couple weeks, like the next 10 days or so. I think it
Hmm.
comes out at the end of the month on the 25th. I'm not going to swear to that, but I think it's like the last issue. It might not be. There might be one more after that, but
Yeah, I was really surprised with the Aliens versus Avengers because I wasn't. I don't know what I was expecting from it, but I'm really liking how that story's developing. Another series that we've been reading on here has been the Ultimate series, which we did kind of like fall behind a little because we're doing it weekly, so uh, yeah, we have a lot of catching up
oh,
to do with the Ultimates, but we have been enjoying the Ultimate series.
And to us that was actually really good how they started that run off. It just that whole build up. It's been good so far. So like how did you like that from your perspective?
well, that one, yeah, the Ultimates run is really, really solid. But that reminds me of one of you guys mentioned earlier, that there was a story where they were talking about people that Galactus was afraid of. And one of you mentioned Molecule Man. That was an Al Ewing's run of the
Mm.
Ultimates. That was, all new, all different Ultimate Avengers. So it was the team that had Black Panther, Blue Marvel, America Chavez, Monica Rambeau, Carol Danvers. That is the run where you find out how powerful Monica Rambeau is. Because up to that point, she was just like a character who was there and did some cool stuff here and there. But I want to say that during Al Ewing's run, although it might have been Al Ewing's Mighty Avengers, but there's one point where whatever it is, Al Ewing's writing the character, and Blue Marvel analyzes her, and he's like, "You're a being made of pure energy. Like if you learn to really harness what you're capable of, you'll be able to control matter on the subatomic level on a universal scale. There'll be nothing that you cannot do." But that was the story where it had everything to do with like the first firmament. So if you're really interested in like cosmic Marvel and you want to know how like, the multiverse got started and all that kind of cool stuff, Al Ewing's Ultimates is a great play. It's a phenomenal read. You learn about the first firmament, which is the first universe, and then that was destroyed in a war between the Celestials and the Aspirants. And the Aspirants were what the Celestials originated from. And so, when the first firmament shattered, that's how the multiverse came into existence. And then the Celestials duplicated themselves and colonized the multiverse and all that kind of stuff. But there's a point in the story where Galactus is trying to figure out how to handle the first firmament when it returns, and he goes to visit Molecule Man. And it's this really, really dope moment because he's kind of talking to himself, and he's like, be very careful, Gallon. Like, this man could end you with a thought. And you don't know who he's going to go talk to. Like, you have no idea who it is. You're assuming like the one above all or something like that. And then it turns out he's talking to the Molecule Man. And it's like, holy cow, like, I didn't know they were going to bring him back. That was back when Marvel was still, to a degree, piggybacking off of what had come out of Secret Wars 2015. Not doing it very well, but doing it somewhat.
Yeah, that was a run where Miles came out of, right? With the Ultimate, is that what you're talking about?
No. So that's one of and that's the confusing nature of comic books. So
Okay.
what you're talking about is the original Earth 1610 Ultimate
Mhm.
Universe. And yeah, they did have a comic book line called the Ultimates. Like that was the Ultimate Avengers in the Ultimate Universe.
Yeah.
When that universe was destroyed during the end of the incursions,
Mhm.
leading up to Avengers and New Avengers, oh my God, during Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers, son. That's the thing that I tell everybody. Like, man, because like people always ask, they say like, what's one comic book run I should read? Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers run. It is the comic book run. Like everything happening in the MCU right now with the multiverse, the incursions, all that kind of stuff. That's all Jonathan Hickman. He did it infinitely better than the MCU is doing it right now. But that is it's like the death of Thor and Hyperion, the collapse of the multiverse. Like there's this amazing moment when Black Panther has to destroy a world in order to save their Earth. And so like, Namor's like, what are you waiting for? And Black Panther's like, I'm not waiting. I'm remembering who I used to be. And then like he detonates the bomb and blows it up. Captain America gets the Infinity Gauntlet. I mean, it's a phenomenal. It's so many great things happen in that run, like top to bottom. It's going to have some slow points, but top to bottom, it's amazing. But anyway, yeah, the original Ultimate Universe, 1610, that ends during the incursions. And so after that, there is no Ultimate Universe in Marvel Comics. At the end of Secret Wars, because of the fact that Miles had helped out, Molecule Man or given Molecule Man a sandwich or something like that. I can't remember what it was. During Secret Wars, when everything goes back to normal, Miles goes into the main Marvel universe. And then his mom is brought back to life by the Molecule Man. And so that's how you kind of get Miles in the main in the main Marvel Comics universe, crossing over with Peter Parker. And then it just goes forward from there. After that, Al Ewing writes Ultimates, and Ultimates takes place in the main Marvel universe. But Al Ewing's Ultimates run has been over for, I don't know, maybe 3 years at this point, maybe almost 4. And so Marvel is relaunching the original Ultimate Universe Avengers as the Ultimates. But to the point that you guys made, that's why comics can really be convoluted and complicated, because right now you're reading the Ultimates, not Al Ewing's Ultimates, the Ultimates from the original Ultimate Universe, which doesn't exist anymore. But now it's back, and it's kind of a nightmare sometimes.
I feel you.
Did you have a score for like, the book that we did today? If you want to just give your own.
Yeah, I want to ask if you want to weigh in, because we could throw your score in there too, and then get see where it lands. Because I know you did read this.
As long as it's not worth like triple points or anything like that.
No, it's the same. It's the same. It's average.
Okay,
It's average.
okay, yeah. As long as it's an even score with everybody else. I'd give it like a
If
7.
you want to break it down, your thoughts on it, and then give a score, like how you, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a proving ground story, right? Marvel doesn't do 2-in-1 or Marvel Presents or anything like that anymore. And so they do those kind of one-off stories now, as a way to give writers a chance to sort of test their abilities and see how the comic performs and see how people talk about it. I mean, the story was great. I'm with you guys. I really would have liked to have seen, what happens next, if for no other reason than to see a fight between
Yeah,
Galactus
man.
and
Oh my god.
the only issue that I have with that potentially going down is that because of the way the comic was written, it was written by a new writer. And so there's not really any indication that, I can't remember what the writer's name was, that he would be able to grasp how a fight between Galactus and the Hulk would go down. What does the Hulk look like now that he's amped up? Because truth to tell, over the course of that story, you don't really see him do much in terms of like raw power. I mean, sure, he fights the Avengers, but an Incredible Hulk imbued with the power cosmic would be on a whole nother level from virtually anybody that's why he killed Carol Danvers so quickly, right? And that's why Iron Man had to talk his way out of it. But truth to tell, like a fight between Hulk and Galactus, that would be interesting because Hulk has something that none of the other heralds have had. Frankie Ray, Terrax, the Fallen One, Silver Surfer. He has infinite strength. And how does that compare to someone like Galactus, who has an infinite source of power with the power cosmic, that has the caveat of always needing to feed? Could the Incredible Hulk basically outlast Galactus in a fight? I don't know, right? I mean, conventional wisdom would say no, like the Hulk would get slapped around, and that would be it, right? I mean, he'd be wiped out in an instant, but you know, who knows? So I don't know exactly how that would unfold, but for a story that was designed for the purpose of giving a writer a chance to show what they can do, right? And to, you know, kind of, chew, you know, to give them something to chew on, right? And demonstrate their mettle. It was fine. Right? The story was good. It was interesting, kept my attention. Was it the best thing I read? No. Was it the worst thing I read? Absolutely not. So it was, you know, I'd give it somewhere between like a 5 and a 7, maybe a solid 6. Is probably
You're
what I
gonna
would.
give it a 6?
Yeah. Now, if
Okay.
we're talking about the Gambit comic, that gets like an 8. That story
That
was
was really good.
Why?
Dang. All right, we
Why?
gotta
Yeah.
reconvene. We gotta
story
Did you,
reconvene.
was
hey Rob? Did you read
great.
the Moon Knight one?
Explain
Yeah.
why get
Nah,
I
we
have
got
not
we
read it.
gotta read it, bro. Yeah,
oh, okay, okay.
can't
Oh,
we
100%. You
can't.
guys really, I've not read the Moon Knight one yet. I might read that tonight, make a video on it tomorrow or maybe later on in the week. But, the Gambit story was phenomenal because there really isn't a whole lot of action in it. I mean, there is some, but if you like the personality of Gambit, specifically from X-Men 97, you get a lot of that. Right. And it's really a perfect answer to the question, like, what would happen if Gambit got the power cosmic and became a herald? And it also builds off the mutant master, which is really, really cool. So if you know the history of the character, it hits even better. But even if you don't, it's still a really fun story to read. So yeah, I'd give that a solid 8, 100%. But yeah, for the Hulk story, I'd like a 6.
We gotta review that. We gotta you gotta come back when we review it. So you can be a
Yeah,
part
we'll
of
see
it.
what's up. That'd be cool.
Hey, Rob,
But all right.
can I ask a
Mhm.
quick question, Rob? As you noticed, like, Emoji was shouting out to the VV community here, and there was a video that actually I came across with you on a podcast where you talked about digital collecting, or that perspective of the digital platform would make a major shift towards comic book collecting. I don't know if you remember, you talked about that a while back, but with Diamond kind of going declaring bankruptcy, have you followed up with anything that's been going on with that?
Yeah, I know of it. I mean, again, it's only a matter of time. I mean, the reality here, and I won't go super in depth into this, I'll make this relatively short, but I mean, when you look at the entire history of comic books, right, you look at the comic book bust of the 1950s, you look at the comic book bust of the 1970s, you look at the comic bust of the 1990s, right? I mean, when you look at all these eras where the comic book industry, for any number of reasons, is on the verge of going belly up, and you kind of look at the way things exist now, especially when you know the back end story, right? When it comes to like Marvel's ownership, Perfect Film and Chemical, and when you look at Jim Shooter, and you look at guys like oh my God, what was his name? He was the CEO of Rembrandt that was brought on and took over Marvel. When you look at guys like Jim Galton and so on and so forth, you come to this realization quite readily that the comic book industry functioning in a way where they only really sell physical comics, like that's their main goal, it makes it a laboring beast, right? I mean, how much time do people spend on their phones? Like TikTok, Red Note, I guess is the new thing, Twitter, so on and so forth. People read on their phones in a lot of instances, even if only because of articles and so on and so forth. Um, Moving more towards a digital sphere is going to, I think, in the long term, keep the industry alive. Because in my mind, it's a hard sell to go to like a 15-year-old kid and say, hey, you live your entire life in a digital space. Come read this physical book. No, that most likely will not happen. I mean, it could. And there's no reason to completely dismiss that. But I think that the smartest move for Marvel and for the comic book industry in general is to inverse their position and to focus more on digital than physical. And I'm saying this as a guy that's got physical copies of X-Men #1 from Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, signed by Jim Lee, right? And made out to me, so I'm never going to sell it. I've got all 4 variant covers of X-Men Volume 2, issue #1. I've got X-Factor #1 from Bob Layton. I've got X-Force #1 from Rob Liefeld. I have, God, what else do I have? Wolverine #1 from the old Frank Miller and Chris Claremont run. You know, I mean, I have a lot of physical comics. The first appearance of Reverse Flash. So as a guy who does have a lot of physical comics, I'm not talking as somebody who is avidly against collecting, not by any standard of measurement. I'm simply talking about, talking as a guy who is looking at the existing landscape of how people interact with the world around them and just kind of rapidly coming to this realization that physical comic books are a thing of the past. And if Marvel and DC and the other publishers don't learn to catch up with that and don't learn to realize that, like by the time they jump into that digital space, yeah, they'll be
Well, they
playing catch up.
kind of have jumped into the digital space now as of 2 or 3 years now. We've been collecting the digital the scarce digital format of Marvel Comics for a while now. Now we obviously have the BB Comics, which Emoji was talking about, where Marvel drops the brand new comics on their digital platform. So they are transitioning, and they do very relevant things. I mean, like they'll drop things on VV that correspond with what's actually happening on the shows or the films. Um, yeah, so we've been on that for a couple of years now, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I get stuff like that, right? The Marvel has their Infinity comics, right, which are digital only releases and things like that, and they take the existing comic book lines and consolidate them into the Infinity line, which are effectively just retellings, or just
Hmm.
digitally adapted versions of print comics. And that's cool and everything. But when has like Dan Slott been brought on to Marvel to write a digital only comic? When has Jonathan Hickman been brought on to do that, right? Like all these writers that they have over the years. Matt Fraction supposedly coming back to Marvel to write some stuff. Maybe we'll end up seeing Craig Kyle and Chris Yoff make their returns. But I would bet you all the money in my pockets to all the money in your pockets, which I'm wearing pajama pants, so I got nothing. That when it comes to Marvel bringing on and specifically Marvel bringing on their top tier talent, they're having them write comics that are just going to go straight to physical copies. Now, if they want to keep that print aspect going, Salvador Comic had a great idea, right? Years ago, we were doing the weekly poll. And he said that Marvel should just move away from floppies and instead just release like 6-issue trade paperbacks and that's it, right? You don't have to collect issue by issue. Now that has its upsides and its downsides, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you guys are relatively new getting into comic books, and I don't know what your experience has been so far, but it's not that uncommon for me to go and read a comic book, get to the 6th issue, and then forget what happened in the first, and have to go
Yeah,
back and read the first issue again,
Oh yeah,
in order
that's
to remind
happening.
myself.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
definitely
yeah. It
Yeah,
does.
happening with
It
us.
does.
And
I, I,
one thing I can say is that when you're speaking about the digital, the beauty of this whole thing is that we actually a lot of us, like I said, some of us were already collectors of physicals. Some of us got into it strictly because of the digital, but now there's
yeah,
this merger. So when you said, like you said it, one's not washing the other one totally out. It's making us collectors of both because we now I've got physicals. I've got the Akira Batman. I have this one. I'm collecting stuff that I would not have thought about because of the digital platform. So it's a perfect marriage actually, and I can see it. And we're just trying to keep building on that foundation that we've already set, and that's why we appreciate it because we've met these people here in this community, and we're growing. And now look, you're here, so
yeah.
it's a
I wanted,
testament of all
I,
this of this building that we're doing.
I wanted to add, Rob, to something that you said, because it actually was interesting, and I didn't think about it before you had brought it up. And you mentioned as far as things being like exclusively digital, right? Like things being written primarily first and foremost for it to be digital, right? And that, potentially being the future. And you know what? I could honestly see that. And the reason why I can see that is because you already have variant cover comics that only exist digitally.
Yeah.
And I don't know, how familiar you are with VV Comics, but when they release their comics, especially like the older comics, the classic comics and stuff like that, they'll have variant covers. They'll commission, artists and stuff like that, the Marvel artists to come in and do variant covers that literally only exist in digital format. So if that's already happening with the art and with the covers, I could definitely see that happening with the entire book down the line.
Yeah, 100%. And that's where you kind of run into this bit of a difference between the collecting space and the
Mm-hmm.
casual space, right? Because you
Mm-hmm.
guys are already avidly interested in comics. And people collect for different reasons, right? Some people collect because they want to flip the comic at some future point in time. Some people like me collect because handing X-Men #1 to Jim Lee and having him spend 15 minutes, right, which he does of his own volition, literally giving
Mm-hmm.
me a rundown of what his life was like reading comics as a kid. Got a once in a lifetime experience that I'll never have again. That's my reason. People collect for various reasons here, but the bigger point is that you already have a motivation to be involved in the comic book space. But
Yeah.
for somebody, when Secret Wars comes out or Doomsday comes out, and people are like, I'm curious what the origin of Doctor Doom is, like a soccer mom or a hockey dad. If you tell them, well, if you really want to know what the origin of Doctor Doom is, go to that shop over there, which looks like it's just been untouched by time and still lives in 1993. And tell the guy in there that you want to know the origin of Doctor Doom. And he's going to give you a trade paperback. And you're going to take it home and you're going to read it. And then you're going to be done with it. And you may or may not keep it. And if you decide not to keep it, then you're going to have a $20 book sitting on your shelf that you're going to throw away at some future point in time. Whereas if it's something like digital, it's like, well, then go here and just read it on your iPad, right? Done. And that's
Yeah.
it. And that is, and to me, it's also the convenience, right? When myself and Benny way back in the day, right, when we used to travel and go to Comic Cons all the time, we eventually started switching over to digital because we got tired of getting onto a plane with a backpack full of comics because we had to get caught up for the week.
Mm-hmm.
We hated that,
I,
right? And
I
so
feel
we were
you.
just like, we're just going to read them on tablet devices. And that's really what took us in the direction, or what took me in the direction specifically with focusing more on digital and kind of leaving physical comic books behind. So, to the point of digital versus physical, I'm addressing more of like the soccer moms, the hockey dads, right? The casual people who may read like one comic ever. As opposed to the people who are already active within the comic book space and are transitioning from collecting comics in one medium to another.
Mm-hmm. I feel you. I feel you.
Yo, I got a really random,
Yeah.
really quick question for you, Rob. So we have this ongoing argument on the show that's pretty funny, and we just want to, this is pretty legendary, so we have to get you to weigh in. Toby, Tom, or Andrew?
Andrew, 100%.
Whoa!
I love Andrew Garfield
Come
Spider-Man.
on.
Andrew Garfield is the perfect Peter Parker. And I know it's not popular to say that now. It was popular to say when No Way Home came out. That was the popular statement to make back then. But now it's not as popular. But I loved Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker and his depiction of Spider-Man. Everything else about the movies were trash. It was a Sony Spider-Man film, right? What can you expect? But, yeah, Andrew Garfield was amazing. I loved him as Peter Parker.
That's awesome. I don't think
Why? Am I in the minority?
you are, dude. You are.
What?
You absolutely are. I don't think we've heard anyone say.
I like Andrew. I like Andrew better than Toby. I like Andrew better
Wait,
than
hold on.
Toby.
Emoji, you're changing.
I
You're
like
changing your
Andrew
answer.
better than the other guy. Yeah.
Emoji, you're changing your
Whoa.
answer right now. First of all, we said Tom Holland because he
I
actually
said Tom. I
does
said
his
Tom was my
own.
favorite. But if I had to
You
pick
like
Jackie
Tom.
between
Chan, and he does
Andrew
his own stunts.
and
So this is where we're leaning towards because the man. Now, X had a great point, and the Andrew like banter of how he talks is very reminiscent.
hmm
Right.
Yeah.
he just
I
has more
think it's Peter
swag.
and then
He
Andrew.
has more
I think it's
swag.
right. The swag accounts for a lot. I think just me personally, I think it's Andrew. I'm not mad at that pick, but I got Toby and then Andrew. And Tom, he's just not in
I'm
there.
always gonna
He's
ride
not
for
in there.
Toby.
They need to re-roll. they got to re-roll that Tom
I mean,
Holland
he's not a terrible
Spider-Man, bro.
Spider-Man. Like, he's not the worst Spider-Man there's ever been. But Andrew Garfield kind
Right.
of had
Yeah.
like that perfect blend, right? I mean, yeah, Tobey Maguire is great. Tobey Maguire is reminiscent of comic book movies in an era where they weren't all like super dark all the time. I mean, hell, I might fire up Spider-Man, right? After this is over and go watch, the old Tobey Maguire, maybe the old, Fantastic Four, but still. I feel like Andrew Garfield kind of has that perfect blend between a Peter Parker who is a little uncertain of himself, right? But a Spider-Man who's overconfident. Like kind of the perfect blend of those two things, right? Just completely contrasting characters. Because that's what Spider-Man was, right? Peter Parker was the guy who always had the Parker luck and, didn't really have as much confidence in himself as he should have. But when he was Spider-Man and the mask came on, well, then everything changed, right? And that was, I felt like Andrew Garfield perfectly encapsulated that character, both in looks and acting. Yeah.
All right, so just to segue off of that question, how do you feel about Ultimate Spider-Man 1 and just like the kind of different take on the character that we know and
More
love?
mature Peter.
Ultimate Spider-Man, hold on. Are you talking about the animated movies?
No, like
No, the
the
comic.
book run, yeah,
Oh,
because like
Hickman's run.
Jonathan
yes,
Oh,
the
Hickman.
okay.
Hickman run. Just to give you some context, like we have a little bit of a debate on like if it's more creative to try to do something like that, or if it's less
Okay,
creative
okay.
to
Let
kind
me
of
give
do
you
what
the
we
rundown,
have.
bro.
It's
Let me give you the
definitely more
rundown
creative.
because
Like, it's
Hey,
definitely more
no, I want to
creative
give the
let's
because
go.
context. I want to give the context because the
here's the,
rundown. Look, Rob. This is the context of it. It's because we're saying, like he said, the Spider-Man books that have been coming out. It's really the retelling of his origin, right? So it's like, come on, it's kind of washed out. Look at the show that we're getting. It's the same thing with the twist on it, right? A slight twist with a little line. So it's like what I'm saying is, to me, that's not really creative. It's harder to create a whole different
what?
story.
What? Oh my
It's
God.
thank
It's
you,
low.
thank
It's
you.
What
low
are
So we
you
hanging
have
Let's
fruit.
talking
someone
about?
here.
go.
So we
It's
have
low
someone
hanging
here
fruit.
who
Let's
thinks that
go. You lined yourself up, bro.
Wow.
You lined yourself
what
up
is
for this.
this is exactly
Nah,
how
because it's low hanging
I told
fruit.
you.
Because
I
people
told you.
know. Because hold on, listen. Because people know, like so many people can rewrite the Spider-Man story. You have to take risks. You have to be audacious when you're rewriting a Spider-Man story. Otherwise, it's just gonna be like, okay, cool twist, and now what? That's kind of the point.
My God,
Cook these
man.
fools, bro. Please cook them.
My
Please
God.
cook them. You
Okay.
got the stage,
Yo,
bro. You got
yo,
the
Dude,
yo,
stage.
dude,
cook,
I've
bro,
got, dude, I
cook.
have a
Yo,
skillet
cook.
ready. Oh my God. Okay. Look, here's the thing about Spider-Man. Right? Here is the thing. And I will say this ahead of time. Sal knows more about Spider-Man than anybody on the planet. He could tell you that, like, off the top of his head, he could tell you the name of the nightclub that Mary Jane Watson ran in her comics in the 1990s. That's how much that guy knows, right? So it's insane how much he knows. But with what I do know and what I have read, yes, this is an incredibly creative direction for Spider-Man because there's a huge difference between Peter Parker being bitten by a radioactive spider and becoming Spider-Man as a teenager, and that happening as an adult. And especially when you throw in the whole idea of you're not who you were supposed to be, right? Like your whole entire history has been changed. So now what you have is instead of Spider-Man, who is a younger guy, he's got the Parker luck and he's trying to figure out how to balance his girlfriend and a social life with friends and all that kind of stuff. Now he's a dad and he's a husband and he's got to figure out how to balance those things with having a job and all that kind of stuff. It makes Spider-Man more grounded and it makes him more tangible and it makes him more relatable to adult readers. I mean, sure, is Jonathan Hickman's ultimate, Spider-Man, is it going to resonate well with like a 15-year-old kid who's really struggling to ask out the girl that he likes in science class? Probably not. Right? But it is going to resonate with you and me and everybody out there that has bills, personal responsibilities, different things along those lines that Peter Parker is currently struggling with as an adult in the Amazing Spider-Man comics. So yeah, it's a lot more creative because the way he handles things is totally different. And I think that because of Peter Parker being an adult, it makes it more reasonable and acceptable for us as the reader to basically digest how it is he handles things with like Harry Osborn, for example, popping up as the Green Goblin. How Harry Osborn handles himself as a Green Goblin, being an adult, who suddenly experienced the loss of his father and different things like that. So yeah, it's a far more creative approach, to the character of Peter than what we've historically seen. Yeah, I'm 100%, like I'm 100% here for it. And it's madness to say otherwise. It's madness
No, no, we
to say
agree that it's a great. We agree that it's a great
it.
book, right? We agree that it's a
Yeah,
great book. But
yeah, yeah.
what we were getting at is like at some point we want to see a Spider-Man. This is like it's always like we said a slight change. Now I'm a father, right? Of girls, I get it. I love the book. We said that it's very relatable, but there's
It was highly
yes,
rated.
it's
It
highly
was highly
rated.
rated.
But
Right.
what we're saying is,
I gave it
I
a
would
10. I
love
gave it
to
a 10.
see. We gave it me and Hollywood prop. We gave it nines, and the other two co-hosts gave it tens, perfect tens, right, for what it delivered. We were more on the side of we wanted to see it told a little different. I'll give you an example. We did the Ultimate X-Men, right?
Hmm.
And the scores were inverse. Me and Hollywood Prop, we gave tens, they gave nines. And we did that because it was the culture, it was the way they went about telling the story. It was a it was an X-Men book without actually saying we're an X-Men book. And that's what we want a little bit from Spider-Man. Like you just gave us the same Pete. Yes, albeit he's older, he has kids, but it's the same story of him going out there fighting a villain, getting knocked off a building. Oh, that was stupid. Let me try again. It's the same redo, and we just want a fresher, like you know what I'm trying to get at. But
I
to
mean, kind of, but like, what does a fresher, more creative Spider-Man
I
look like
don't
to you?
know. I don't know. Even so, my thing
That's why it's so hard to do.
exactly,
Well,
That's why it's so hard to do.
okay,
exactly.
I don't understand that. I don't understand that. It's like,
Well,
okay, we need a
well,
fresher, more creative Spider-Man. Okay, well, what does that look like?
a
I don't
story, a
know.
different story.
Well, if you look at what Peach from Oko did with X-Men, right? Like that, I wouldn't say that's a fresher, newer. It was just extremely different. And you had to make these connections, these correlations and the symbolism that she even put in there, right? Cause she had to almost tell the story through symbols to make it relatable, and like metaphors to what we think and know what X-Men is. So I'm not saying that the Spider-Man story needs to be that abstract and that different, but again, and I'm like the comic book noob up here, and I'm coming from like the film world. I'm coming at it from like a cinephile perspective, and so, and it's just funny that me and Boogie kind of align on it. And again, it's highly rated, but worth tens, right? See, the thing is like we give it nines, but is it worth a 10? Just for that little bit of extra, just I feel like there wasn't a lot of risk, right? Like, and maybe it didn't need that to be a great story, but I was just looking for, and again, as a comic book newbie, it's like I don't know how many times the Spider-Man story is retold. I really don't know, but for that one, I'm just like, you know, it could have
I
been a
think you
little
were
bit more
looking for like a
streamlined.
Miles. I think you were looking for like a Miles, which is pretty much a
Maybe,
different
maybe
I
I
mean,
don't
character.
know,
Miles
maybe.
changed the game. When Miles was introduced, when
Mhm.
Bendis and Sarah Pichelli threw out Miles Morales, they changed the way the Spider-Man comics were perceived for a lot of people. Because
Mhm.
Spider-Man comics were, hey, I'm Peter Parker, and I'm being attacked by any one of my Sinister Six again. How am I gonna think my way out of this one? And the stories were relatively mundane. But then Miles comes along. And Miles is like, I've been bitten by the same spider that bit Peter Parker, and Peter Parker is dead. Do I become Spider-Man? Right? I mean, it's in his own way, and the way the story was written, it wasn't really as direct as Uncle Ben with his dying breath. With great power must also come great responsibility, Peter, and then takes his last breath, and that's the end of it. But Miles basically got the exact same thing. Right? He has the power to do something with the power he has. So he has the responsibility to. But how does he handle that? Is it desecrating the memory of Peter Parker by jumping out there and becoming Spider-Man? And if you guys read the original Miles Morales comic, that was a huge focal point. So much so that he throws the costume on, he goes out there, and then Nick Fury and like Jessica Drew, right, the female clone of Peter, they pull him aside and they're like, "What are you doing? Right? You don't just jump out there and be Spider-Man. That's not okay." Right? That kind of thing. And in a lot of ways, it kind of reflected the fan sentiment of Miles at the time, which was, he's not our Spider-Man. And then Bendis is like, "Oh, yes, he is." And he writes a story called Spider-Man, which is where Miles and Peter meet for the very first time. Like, Miles from the Ultimate Universe and Peter from the main Marvel Universe, right? They meet each other when like Mysterio.
I have that book.
Yeah, yeah, like Mysterio ends up in the Ultimate. I think it's Mysterio or Vulture or somebody like that. They end up in the Ultimate Universe, and so, yeah, so like they encounter, and at the end of the story, Peter's just like, "I give you my blessing to be Spider-Man," and Miles goes forward to the new Spider-Man, which is kind of Bendis telling the reader, like, he's here to stay, guys. He's not going anywhere. And then eventually people sucked it up, and now they love the character of Miles. But the story of Miles was wildly different because it wasn't just this, I'm this kid who's struggling with just young person life stuff. Miles is like, I'm a poor kid in the inner city, right? I'm going to a charter school. I got in there by a lottery system. There's a lot of like real world things that people were struggling with at the time, and they're still struggling with, that were reflected in his comics. And because of the fact that there was that relatability there were a lot of people who otherwise would never have read a Spider-Man comic that got into it. But at the end of the day, Miles' stories were still Spider-Man stories, right? A young guy dealing with these small little things. It's only really by virtue of who the character interacts with, that make the stories unique and make them stand apart from what's previously been done. Like, for example, right now, in the Miles Morales comics, he was bitten by Blade during Bloodhunt. So he's a vampire. And right now he's with Black Panther in Wakanda, and they're trying to figure out how to turn him back into a regular person, and like Black Panther gave him a vibranium suit, which helps him control his, vampire urges. And I think right now, because of the fact that Miles is part of the Spider Totem, him and Black Panther have to fight each other on behalf of their respective gods. It's really, really cool, right? Like Panther fights on behalf of Bast, and then Miles fights on behalf of Aronski or whatever his name. I can never remember what his name is, but the spider god, essentially. But those small little tidbits here and there are really what separate things, and it's really what makes the character intriguing. And that's why reading Miles, like if we were having this conversation back when Miles first showed up, and say it's like issue number 3 in the Ultimate Spider-Man, it would just kind of be like, it feels like a Spider-Man comic. There's nothing phenomenal, but it's only in hindsight, looking at the entire run of Brian Michael Bendis and Sarah Pichelli, and seeing how Miles' character evolved over the course of that run, that you say, okay, given its totality, it was a landmark Spider-Man run, right? One that landed Brian Michael Bendis as the #1 writer in Marvel, as if, his Ultimate Spider-Man run with Peter Parker didn't even do that, right? Like it elevated him, beyond simply just the top of the comic book line. He was doing like interviews on CNN and all kinds of stuff, right? It was a huge deal when Miles dropped. But looking at Ultimate Spider-Man now by Jonathan Hickman, I think this is one of those comic book runs where in the here and now, issue by issue, people will have the same kind of view that you do, where it's like, it's okay. I wish it was a little more creative, and I can't really specify what that creativity is. I know it's not resonating with me in a way that feels different than what I've already read. Whereas you'd have people like me who were just like, it's great! But I think in like a year or 2 years, I think people are going to kind of look back and I think views will change to a degree, right? This is not Jonathan Hickman's X-Men where like right out of the gate, he just knocks, blows the doors off. And it's just like, Krakoa's here, guys, and the X-Men are going to get wiped out by a hybrid of machines and humans at some point in the future. This one is a very, very slow, methodical build. Clearly, you guys have been reading it, but like the people who haven't, right? Pick up the first issue and you'll figure out just how slow the comic book run is. But again, it's kind of the Hickman style to do a slow burn. So I'd be curious to see what your all's thoughts are for Hickman's run on Ultimate Spider-Man, if and when he leaves the title, whatever, however much time passes. I'd be curious to see if they change, and where they go, if they stay at 9s and 10s, or if they kind of average out and drop down a little more and maybe like 6s or 7s, or if they stay high and the 9s become 10s and you end up finding the creativity that you were looking for. I'm curious.
Yeah, that was a great explanation. But we do have Clint. We do
Yeah.
have Nas Clint here, so he got his hand
Oh,
up.
Nas Clint is up?
Yeah, he's got his hand up. He's got his hand up.
It was good,
Yo,
Nas.
what up, Emojii, RX,
What's
Chrome,
up, bro?
Boogie, Wulu, Rob. First off, I'm just gonna say this with a breath of fresh air. This has been a freaking awesome, fun space. Uh, and I'm just gonna say this right now. I'm just gonna call it what it is. Anyone that was here 2 years ago when we had Comic Alley, back when PA, Local, and eBooks were just talking straight books, just straight books, this was fire. So Rob, thank you for coming in, and I just wanted to kind of come in hot with this. I'm going to be voting for first ever regrade because on Spider-Man Ultimate #1, because everything that Rob just said, as far as it being a book I actually picked up as someone who wasn't reading books, just kind of following as everyone, and I actually got motivated to pick up Ultimate Spider-Man #1 and read that from beginning to the end and enjoyed the completely different outlook of Spider-Man. And that one, as the adult version, coming from a dad with 4 kids, it kept me in there 100%. So I just want to vote a regrade
Let's
on that.
go.
That needs a
Another
10.
10.
That needs a
Another
10.
10. There
That
we
needs a
go.
10.
Listen,
Let's
listen,
go.
we not
Let's
on that
go.
week,
Another
Nas. We
10.
not on
Let's
that week. We
go.
can't go back. We can't go back and add a 10.
No, we gotta crack that slab. We gotta crack that digital slab. All these people regrading nowadays, we gotta do a first ever recrack on this digital slab and pop that 10 on
Oh,
there.
that's crazy.
I
Pop that
agree.
10 on
I
there.
agree. I agree.
Nah, it's on the blockchain chip.
That's crazy.
Oh,
No,
man.
these ain't really
Thank you,
NFTs,
man.
bro.
That's awesome.
What'd you say, Nas?
Appreciate you, bro.
No, nothing.
Appreciate you, bro.
Yeah,
Is is there someone else? What'd you say, bro?
yeah, we got
Oh,
Wulu.
Wulu's
Wulu, what's
there?
going
What's
on?
up,
Wulu had
Wulu?
his hand up too
Wulu, what's going
before.
on?
Yeah.
What's going on, y'all? The comic shop, Thursday's finest show. You know what I'm saying, baby? Man, I just hopped out the sauna, man. I saw how the space was going. I'm like, okay, something's a little different. Y'all got my boy Rob in here?
Yo.
If y'all don't know, bro, Rob one of the biggest, YouTubers when it come to comics explain, bro. I just watched
The
your video,
biggest.
bro,
The
on
biggest.
that Ultimate Wolverine, bro. You know what I'm saying? I like what they doing with the suit, Winter Soldier type aspect to
Ooh,
my guy. You know what
fire.
I'm saying? I want to see how this turns out. You know what I'm saying? So I want to say welcome to that space. These guys do this on a weekly basis. They cover all the material, bro. Yeah, man. So just welcome. I just want to say welcome, man. And, bro, I love the content. Love how you go into all the comics, the current stuff. You go into some of the older stories. You got the whole storylines. Love it, bro. Keep it up. But, yeah, man. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you. You know what's so ironic is like most of my fans don't know how much I know.
We're figuring that out right now, bro. Because like
Yeah.
I said, we don't.
Bro,
The beautiful thing I think that we bring is that we don't try to be
yeah.
experts. We talk about it and we go through the feelings of it, through the movies and everything like that. Like we literally had a debate the other day about like is Tony Stark like surpassing Wolverine and like popularity like nowadays because of the movies and things of that nature. And we know where 181 stands and where uh Iron Man's FA stand. Like we're not debating that, but it's just that we go through different things, and I think us being quote unquote newbies at this, it allows us to mess up, and having someone like you come in here and explain this is dope as hell. You know what I mean? So yeah, man.
Bro, trust me, we know, at least I know that you know more than ChatGPT about comics, bro. Like
I don't know about all that, man.
I'm pretty sure that's the case, dog. For real.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We definitely figuring out. You know a lot, bro. Like that. This is crazy.
Yeah, we.
Yo, Tete, what's going on? We got
Oh,
Tete
Ted
up
up
here
there
They
too?
real
said,
quick.
what's
Tete,
Oh,
going
what's going
on?
snap.
on?
Yo, what's
Yeah.
good, Ted?
Yo, what's going on, fellas? How y'all doing today, man? I saw that y'all was on the convo. I heard Miles referenced in the latest issue 28, which I was just having a conversation about in depth with my boy with regards to, I think, Comics Explain, how you doing, bro? With regards to Miles becoming, pretty much getting bit by a blade and all of that, and him being identified now as a herald, if you will, representative of Kwaku Anansi, who I think you were referencing, whilst Black Panther is that of Bastet. And yeah, I missed your final point because I was rugging, but that's why I was trying to jump up to see what you were saying. So apologies for missing the ending bit. Were you speaking to when you were talking about Peter Parker? And I think my boy Hollywood, aka Prop, was speaking about the changes that I made in the current arcs. Were you saying in defense of the current arcs, or apologies again for jumping in late? But
No, I guess the final point that I was making was that in essence, it's too early to know whether or not it is whether or not Hickman is doing anything that hasn't been done before with Spider-Man, right? We're what, like maybe 9 or 10 arcs in. We just got the Venom symbiote, like the actual symbiote, different things like that. Yeah, it's way too early to know. And the bigger point that I was making, or I guess one of the last things I said was, I'd be curious to see how people's opinions on Hickman's run changes, when his run ends. And people kind of look back on it in hindsight. Because again, it's kind of a testament to that, right? Like, if I use like Dan Jurgens' run, for example, of, Thor, Dan Jurgens' run on Thor in the late 1990s, right? Which is the run that bookends into, Ragnarok. So like Odin dies during Jurgens' run and stuff like that. It was kind of boring to me at the time. And I was just like, I'm not really feeling this run at all, right? Like Odin dies and Thor just becomes a terrible leader. And it felt like character assassination. But I go back and read it now and it's just like, dude, this story was phenomenal, man. So it really, over time, and as people's interests and tastes change, our perceptions of stories change. So I'd be curious to see, if the nines become tens and, if the tens become nines, if it inverts or it's just straight tens or if it averages out and drops down to like sixes and sevens. Just kind of curious.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with that, especially because I do that a lot too, even just watching series and things like that. Because I'm big into anime. And a lot of times I look at it as, well, how does this whole story wrap up? Like, how does this, how does this entire, thing play out, and look at the whole picture? And that can shape a lot as far as my initial thoughts versus, my initial thoughts going in versus, kind of taking it into context with the entire story. So I am interested too, once this all ends, to see how. But so far, I mean, for me, so far, I'm liking the start. I like it. I like the switch ups. I like it. It's a little, and you know what? All right, it is a little twist, right? He's older, but there's so many nuances that happen now because of that. Because of the fact that he has a family, because of the fact that he has kids, because like all of these things that literally shape his decisions and how he moves. And sometimes that's all it takes. It just takes a little shift to literally change everything. And I like that. I like the fact that, you're kind of like seeing it from a different lens. It is the same person, it's the same Peter, but different experiences, different time in life, different things going on, and that literally changes the scope of everything.
Well, I didn't like how naive he was. I'm gonna be real. I didn't like how naive he was.
You never was a superhero before. He's like
I get that, but you're a grown man. You gotta make grown man decisions. You can't
The
be
fact
falling
that
for the
Uncle
same
Ben's
thing
around
more than
too.
one.
You ain't like he
come
got
on,
blown
bro.
off the building, blown off the top of the
Yeah,
building.
bro, come on. That was the only little thing. That's why I couldn't be attentive to me, because I'm like, I get it. You're new at this. You don't, you're going through it. But I just felt like, come on, you're a grown man now. You're not little Pete. Like,
I
you should
feel
have been a
you.
little skeptical. Like,
I feel
uh,
you. I feel you. I feel you. Well,
that's it.
we'll
That's
see.
Yeah.
We'll
it.
see. We'll see how it all.
Little minor
We'll
complaint.
see how it all plays
Hold on,
out.
hold on,
But
hold on, hold on. We got Tite with his hand up
Tech,
again. We got
what's up,
Tite with his
Tech?
hand up again. Hold on. Yeah. I know you can't see.
Yeah, no, my bad. I'll be rugging, so I'm just trying to make sure I jump in. Okay, fair enough. Just to the Bro Comics Explained points, I'm gonna say something which might be a hot take. Hopefully, it's not. I've been bored with Peter Parker for 20 years.
Oh, I hope it is.
Ooh.
I have been bored to holy hell with Peter Parker for 20 years. Now, as a lot of people in this space will tell you, like I talk a lot about spiders. My handle is Tete Anansi because so I'm Ghanaian by background, and Kweku Anansi, who you referenced, which appears in issue 28, who has appeared before. Stan Lee finally had brought him in because I was waiting for him before he passed away to bring him in and identify that pretty much he had taken all of the lore and the ideas of Peter Parker from the idea of Kweku Anansi, who's a trickster and spidey god in West African spirituality for decades. And I was like, okay, this is finally time bringing him in. He did. However, he counted it out, which is why I was so excited when like Death of Peter Parker and Death of Spider-Man happened, because I was like, okay, cool. We're finally going to get to see someone who is represented as a herald of Kweku Anansi, who is both one of the wisest individuals in the god pantheon, as well as a trickster god, but not necessarily in a kind of Western standpoint, which is why you see the duality of Peter Parker's character being this like pseudo genius, whilst also, he likes to talk shit when he's beating people up and punch them in the face. So with Miles, we actually get to see in my opinion, like the naivety reflected. However, not in the same way how we have Peter, which is what my boy, I think E Boogie was speaking to, which is what always frustrated me. So yeah, so like, and in that issue, I was actually just looking at the panel now when he speaks about being spoken for, when they talk about him being spoken for by Kwaku Anansi, who what was the name? I think Stanley dropped him first time in an issue like 15 years ago or something like that. And then that we pretty much see Anansi stating to Peter Parker or vice versa, like, oh yeah, pretty much like, why do you think that, why do you think I chose you? Or why do you think that you have these powers, so to speak? Because it all goes back to him. But they just kind of left it out into the wings. And, yeah, I was kind of frustrated, and I still am frustrated that they kind of haven't allowed him to kick the bucket. I think they're kind of riding the coattails of novelty because they're afraid people will pretty much be pissed at Marvel forever for actually killing Peter Parker and all the runs. But I'm hoping, but I think it will never happen. But I think this is a much better arc with the continuation of Miles, given that it's drawing back to the original stories of Anansi, which I highly implore everyone to look up, down to the battles with Osobo, down to I think there's another one called Onini, which is like the snake. All characters in which you see again represented as villains from the 1950s up until now in modern day Western comics. But again, these are like stories that are hundreds, if not thousands, of years old.
Okay.
Cook, bro. Cook.
Dope.
Let's go.
Yo, appreciate
Well,
that, man.
that's okay. So that's what makes things interesting is because Anansi, I'm not familiar with like the real world mythos of Anansi, but like, I mean, if we're talking about like Anansi's debut in Marvel, like he was an old Thor character, but if my memory serves me, he was never really mentioned. It was just like it was a Thor story that had to do with like a godly pantheon or something like that. But it wasn't until the early 2000s when you started getting into like J. Michael Straczynski's run that Anansi showed up as like the actual god of the spider pantheon. And that's when he was building up like spider totems, and then Dan Slott built on all of that with Spider-Verse and all that kind of stuff. But, um, I don't know, because even with Anansi being like the god of tricksters, I would argue that the character similarities between Anansi and Peter Parker are more incidental than anything else. Um, because sure, Peter Parker jokes and Peter Parker quips, and if we never got an explanation as to why, then I would probably roll with that and just say, you know what, I mean, and with a lack of an explanation, let's just call it for what it is and just go with that. But during Dan Slott's run with Spider-Man Renew Your Vows during Secret Wars 2015, one of the things that Peter Parker joked or mentioned was that he jokes with his villains because he doesn't want them to know he takes them seriously. And when he jokes and makes fun of the entire situation, it frustrates them and they stop thinking clearly. And so I guess maybe there's some credible argument to make there in saying that because of the nature of Anansi being the spider god and Peter Parker, even if he's not the first person to ever become a spider totem in Marvel Comics, we don't really know if that's the case or not. He's certainly the most iconic, that he was influenced by the mannerisms and personalities of Anansi. But if that were the case, I would say that takes away from the character of Peter Parker more than it gives credence to the validity of Anansi being a trickster god.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree that it would take away from it. And if anything, that's pretty much what I'm saying. I think that it should. And while I would agree that it could be incidental, but I'll give a metaphor like this. Let's say, let's say Christianity ended tomorrow, and then 1,000 years from now, rappers were wearing gold chains. It would be with crosses on them. It would still be impossible to separate Christianity from the fact that the reason why people are wearing crosses is in its relation to a religion which, although not necessarily known by people, still has that connection. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get that. And it'd be one thing if Peter Parker was aware of the fact that Anansi existed. And say, for example, that Peter Parker had met Anansi at some point before he was ever bitten by a radioactive spider. Then that analogy would hold up. But when Peter Parker was bitten by a radioactive spider, he just developed the proportional strength of a spider and all of his abilities and what have you. And then when Straczynski wrote his run, Peter learned from, oh my God, what was his name? Oh my God, what was his name? The guy from the alternate reality that was trying to save him from Morlun. I can't remember his name. Anyway, he learned from him about like the spider totems and all that kind of stuff. And so, as far as the official canon in Marvel is concerned, Peter Parker had no idea who Anansi was, and he had no idea that being bitten by a radioactive spider meant that now he was part of, well, I guess to quote Nick Fury, a much larger world. Um, so so yeah, I mean, again, if they had met before, sure, but two individuals having never met each other at any particular point in time, unless we're playing 6 degrees of separation, it'd be kind of a hard sell to argue that Anansi had somehow influenced Peter Parker's mannerisms and him being the kind of person that he is just by virtue of, you know, being a spider totem. Because if that were the case, seemingly every spider totem out there would joke the same way that Peter Parker does. And while Dr. Octopus and Superior Spider-Man is the only person who's not really a spider totem because he was never really bitten by a radioactive spider or inherited Spider-Man genes, where he just took over the body of Peter, that would mean that Cindy Moon and Peter Parker and Miles Morales and Kane and Ben Riley and all those characters would all pretty much act the exact same way that Peter does due to their influence from the character of Anansi himself. So don't get me wrong. I mean, I do love the idea of there being like spider totems, and I do love the idea of like the way the Godhead works in Marvel, because like one of the little known facts is that Bast did not start off as a panther god. Bast started off as an Egyptian god in Marvel Comics, and then eventually migrated to Africa, and then was worshipped by Wakandans, and then ultimately became the patron god of the Black Panther clan. But all these small little tidbits here and there. I love the way all that stuff works, and I love that Spider-Man are all part of like this web of life and destiny and wildly, complex narrative that sometimes throws people off. But I find it all fascinating.
I feel you. I feel you.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think if we're looking solely in the framework of the potential connectivity from the lore that we observe, like reading the canons as they are, for sure, I would agree with you. My point, the point that I'm trying to make, again, another hot take, uh, and I wish he was alive to say, because I always wanted to ask him this in Comic Con, but I never made it to Comic Con before he died. Rest in peace, Stan Lee. Was I think he ripped the whole shit. I think he took the idea. I think he took the idea. I think he's seen what was going on with the Nancy. Right, like, all right, I'm literally speaking about this guy directly, and then came up with a character where you remove enough elements for it to be marketable, and then therein it became a character that other people could associate with. Because I know that, like, at least, again, culturally, and like everybody that I know, whether it's in West African, Afro-Caribbean culture, they're talking 3.5 billion people has heard of Anansi. And yes, Spider-Man is a recognizable character. However, one predates the other by, like I was mentioning, like ages. So yeah, that's why, and then that for me kind of comes full circle as to why I was like, there's so much missing that could have been explored up until we had Ultimate Fallout, and Death of Spider-Man, Death of Peter Parker, and then the introduction of Miles, and then I was like, okay, cool, we might be on to something here. Yeah, just my perspective. But
I feel you, bro. I feel you.
That's fair. That's cool.
I do. I am gonna have to start wrapping things up because I gotta pack up my setup. But I do want to say, Rob, appreciate you for coming through. This was a blast. I didn't even know if you were actually gonna stop by or not. So, thank you I hope you had a good time, man. And feel free to stop through anytime. We do this on a weekly basis every Thursday. So, if you want to come through, swing through. If you want to even be a guest where you review a book with us, hit me up because we can work that out too. So just let me know. But I do hope you have a good time, and I'm glad that you stopped through. We appreciate your knowledge and appreciate your passion, and yeah, man, it was a dope space. It was a dope space.
Yeah, definitely. This was like super cool. I had a great time. Yeah, thanks for letting me come on.
Anytime, bro. Does anyone want to have any closing thoughts before we wrap things up?
Yeah, as always, like I think we closed out one time before, and then we start going crazy with all the conversations. But I'll just follow up and saying,
Yeah, we got to close now. We got to close.
yeah. Bless everybody. Appreciate y'all. Doctor Strange, feel better. And Rob, thanks for coming through, man. For real, come through again, man. This was like you gave us our old vibes back. You gave us more than that, and just the conversation was great. So please stop by again.
For sure, for sure. Um,
Yeah,
anyone else
definitely.
want
Yeah,
to?
bro, it's great having you.
I'm gonna go ahead and bounce out of here, guys.
No problem, no problem. Thank you again, bro. Appreciate having
Thanks, man.
you with
Have a
us.
good
Yep.
one.
Catch you guys later.
Take care, man. Anyone else want to say anything before we close out?
Nah, I think
Yeah,
we
we need
said
to
enough.
finalize that regrade. We need to finalize that regrade, bro. We need to finalize
Yo,
that shit.
yo,
The
Emoji,
regrade is crazy.
Oh
Emoji,
man.
close us
Yeah.
out,
All
bro.
right,
Close us out, bro.
bro. Let's do it. Let's do it. Hold on. Where's OBS at? Here we go. All right, here we
What's the plug for next
go. Here we
week,
go.
man? What's next week? Damn.
Oh, damn. You know what? I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that, Wulu. Really quick. If anybody that enjoyed today's space, thank you for tuning in. Next week, we're going to have Informant on the show. So that's going to be an exciting one. So definitely tune in and, check us out on the timeline to see what book we'll be reviewing. Same time. But yeah, go ahead, Emoji. Thank you guys. Thank
No
you,
problem.
Wulu.
No problem. Yo.